All right, stand by. 10 seconds.
Camera one.
Count.
Ready, camera two.
And cue talent.
One.
Roll for record.
There's a big fight over porn. I'm John Phillips, and X-rated regulation is at the top of today's rundown. Porn stars recently went to war with the state of California over proposed new regulations that would have required them to be completely protected against each other's bodily fluids during shoots. No pun intended. What would that mean practically? Well, it would mean mandatory condom use, of course, but also sheets of latex over women's private parts, and even wearing goggles or face shields to prevent anything from getting in somebody's eye. The State Occupational Safety and Health Standards Board, after hearing hysterical testimony from a number of performers, voted 3-2 against the new rules. But the fight isn't over yet. AIDS activists, led by the AIDS Healthcare Foundation in Los Angeles, are pushing a statewide ballot measure to force California to regulate. That same group pushed through a similar ballot measure in Los Angeles County, previously the national epicenter of the porn industry, which resulted in a mass exodus of porn shoots to other parts of the state. So the question is, should the government regulate pornography? Is this an issue that splits both the right and the left? The left always loves to regulate workplace safety, but hates to be seen as legislating morality or attacking free speech and self-expression. On the right, we hate nanny state and job-killing government regulations, but many conservative voters think porn is bad for the moral fiber of the nation, and anything that makes it harder to create and distribute porn is a good thing. Joining me to talk about all the controversy is author and political satirist Scott Ott in his home studio in Dallas, Texas, and here in Southern California, stand-up comic and PJTV contributor Stephen Cruiser. You know, Cruiser, there are occupational hazards to every job that you take. If you're a construction worker, you know there's a risk that you're going to be injured. If you're a police officer, you know there's certain risk involved with that job. If you are a performer in the porn film industry, you know there's certain risk associated with that occupation. If you think the industry protects you enough to meet your satisfaction, why is it the government's role to step in and say, no, you can't do this?
Money, 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 money. That's all the government wants. Municipalities, especially state and municipal governments, are just looking to generate revenue. They don't care if anybody dies. If it's about safety, they don't care. The feds actually do want to control your lives. The states and the municipalities are just after the revenue right now. And the reason... One of the things that makes this so odd, I mean, you can sit there and say, okay, the AIDS scare and everything, but guess what? The porn people have been alive since 1985 too, and they know about AIDS, okay? And the reason they're not all dying from it is because they do take the precautions. You can hate it, you can loathe the industry, you can loathe whatever, but they're all aware of the risk, and they do take the precautions right now. For the government to say they just want some money right now, and for the people who think that this will make it harder to do porn, if you want to get rid of porn, you got to get rid of the internet. That ain't going to happen.
You know, Scott, this is not an isolated incident. If you look at what's going on in the world of professional football, we had the Concussion movie with Will Smith that did great numbers at the box office and got a lot of people talking about what the impact of concussions are on the lifespan and the quality of life for these players. So now you have certain legislators saying, well, maybe we should go in and we should regulate the NFL. Maybe we should get involved with how much padding is involved with the helmets. Maybe we should say, no, you know what, football is too hard altogether. Maybe we should look to other sports. This is something that's upsetting to me because guess what? These guys that play football, these performers that work in the porn industry, they're adults. They should be able to make up their own minds. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think in general that's true. Now, the open question is how many people, especially women who are involved in the porn industry, are in essence glorified sex slaves, are doing these things because they have to do them because they don't have a lot of choice. Now, what we see in the actual news coverage of this, it is these people who are actually giving testimony saying, we don't want the safety precautions. In most industries, safety precautions are driven by the demands of either the employees or the customers. And to have the employees saying, look, if we start doing this, then it's going to hurt our business and that money source will not be there for us. We don't want to do it. I just can't imagine the government taking a role in this because, you know, with like the Occupational Safety and Health Administration right now, they go do periodic on-site inspections. Who's going to get a government job to go to porn sites and investigate whether they're following all the regulations?
You know, I think there's a deeper political motive that's associated with this, particularly since the AIDS Healthcare Foundation is pushing this. it's good for their fundraising if the public believes that anyone can get AIDS anytime, any place, anywhere. And the fact of the matter is that's just not true. We know that AIDS is primarily transmitted between sex between men, in drug use when you're using needles, and before we really got the system checked out and we fixed the problems through blood transfusions. But if people accept that and people believe that to be the reality, then they're less inclined to write checks to organizations like the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. If they say, look, we need to regulate the porn industry and we need to make sure that all of these women can't do certain things, then that kind of beats into the heads of the public that, oh, wait a minute, you can easily get AIDS from any kind of sex, and that's just not true.
You're telling me that everything I saw on television from 1988 to 1998 was a lie? I mean, you kids out there may want to go Google how AIDS used to be covered, and it's exactly as John said. They would tell you you were going to walk outside and a blast of it was going to hit you from the sun somehow. That is one of the most sound theories I've heard on this in a long time. And it really doesn't apply here at all, again, because of the precautions. You know, you brought up the NFL analogy. The problem there is the industry was not protecting its people. The NFL pretended this didn't happen for decades. And you ended up with, you got a lot of guys even who played in the 90s right now committing suicide because of their concussion-related symptoms.
Including Junior Seau.
Yeah, that is not the case right now. Right now, anybody who's been drafted in the NFL in the last 10 years who gets a concussion and pretends like the league abandoned him on, that's just not true anymore, but they were forced to respond. This is an industry that's regulated itself a little bit better, and it's like really difficult to sit there and try to say, well, I'm a conservative, but maybe this, but it reminds me of the drug thing back in the 70s and 80s. It was a lot of prominent conservative voices who first got behind the decriminalization or the legalization of drugs because conservatives were far more libertarian. There was a more Goldwater-esque vibe to them, and they were saying, forget the government out of this, and you have to sometimes detach yourself from whether you have any distaste for the actual issue to see where you fall on the political side of things. And this is just, if you're generally opposed to government regulation, this is another good place to be generally opposed to it.
What do you think about my theory, Scott, that the AIDS Healthcare Foundation has a financial motive in this?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think there's a lot of fundraising that goes around a lot of different diseases that, frankly, there are organizations whose ongoing salaries depend upon your concern that you may get this or that it's relatively easy to get. I do want to throw in a little bit. We may want to double check, and there's still early research happening on this NFL concussion stuff, but I've read a recent review of studies that basically said that even though, yes, NFL football players certainly get concussions, the rates of suicide and the other kinds of things that are being reported as a result of this are not out of line with the rest of the population. And in some cases, actually, the rates of negative effects from that concussion syndrome are below what happens in the rest of the population. In addition, there's the whole factor of football isn't the only sport that you can play where you can get a concussion. So I'm not saying there's nothing harmful going on there. I'm just saying that the involvement of government in it and some, like you point out, John, some of these busybody organizations that benefit from raising money around it may have created a sense of danger that doesn't exist. That said, I'm an evangelical Christian, and I think pornography is bad for the moral fiber of a nation or the world. However, government is not the answer to that. Government can't fix it.
And let's be honest, if the AIDS Healthcare Foundation is successful, they get what they want, they have California effectively ban porn shoots, people aren't just going to stop watching porn. Guess what? The shoots are going to move to Nevada. They're going to move to Arizona. They're going to move to other states, maybe out of the country.
Canada, like every other television thing here did. That's where they're all going to go. It's like that's how onerous the regulatory atmosphere and the taxation atmosphere has become here. The people are fleeing to a socialist country because it's easier to do business. That's how bad it's been in Los Angeles for a long time. That's why, you try to see all these things and I go, oh, here we are in West LA and it's got these tall pine trees. No, you're not. You're in Vancouver. Stop pretending. But that's exactly what's going to happen. I mean, it's like, from a plain business point, look, don't get rid of your tax base like that. 3/4 of the hotels in Chatsworth are going to close if the porn industry leaves for good. So, it's like you've got to. There's a detachment again you have to have on this, and your theory about the AIDS Health Foundation is like every time that there's a lot of fundraising at stake or a lot of research money at stake and everything, I often get the feeling that nobody has a vested interest in it ever getting better, and the fear-mongering has to remain high.
I've got a prediction as to what the response is going to be from the adult film industry to this regulation. I think is what you're going to see is you're going to see the actors, the performers unionize. Because if they had a union and they had a seat at the table in Sacramento and they were able to spend just as many dollars as the AIDS Healthcare Foundation lobbying against it, I think that you would see a much stronger position on their side.
Gives a whole new meaning to big labor.
And there's John, there's a motivation in any industry to make sure that you can maintain your profits. And in this particular industry, if you start having a problem with actors getting AIDS or dying or whatever, and I know now it's not the death sentence that it used to be because of medication and therapies and stuff like that, but you don't want to have a reputation in an industry of a place where you go to die. And so that's why, as Stephen indicated, they already have testing protocols and things like that they've put in place. I think if for example, the Department of Agriculture got out of the meat inspection business, do you think suddenly people would be dropping dead in the streets from salmonella? No, the meat inspecting, the companies themselves would institute the same kinds of meat inspection regimens because they want people to buy their stuff so they can make money.
By the way, the ace in the hole for the porn industry, they added in with the minority whip at the Senate. Now it's your turn. What do you think? Should government regulate porn or just let it be? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'm John Phillips. Thanks so much for watching The Rundown.